I am not Cuban, but because I grew up in Miami, Florida, surrounded by Cuban culture, I am sometimes mistaken for being Cuban. Now, those who mistake my identity identify in me the components of being Cuban based on an aggregation of stereotypes: hair color, complexion, attitude. And even if I don't aggregate such items into my identity, when I hear Cuban, I sense or feel some sort of emotional attachment to a representation. Cuban is a key word for misplaced identity because of how I respond to an aggregation of events and influences that surrounded me growing up: food, coffee, neighborhoods, music, and dress. Identity involves more than identification with ethnicity. Identity is an aggregation. And with social media, identity is a digital aggregation. One space where we see such aggregation is the digital projection of social protest, particularly for how individuals respond to social protests as the protests move from physical to digital spaces. The Charlie Hebdo massacre of January 2015, for instance, produced a moment of identification summarized in a sentence: I am Charlie. The I am Charlie proclamation circulated from the physicality of France to online spaces as those upset over the murders of French cartoonists showed solidarity with these senseless deaths. The murder of four Jewish shoppers in a French kosher supermarket the following day, which are aligned with the Hebdo killings too, was followed by statements of identity. I am a Jew quickly circulated as a response to these deaths, a response aggregated from the Hebdo moment, as well as recent French racist feelings and violence toward this large Jewish population. The I am meme is a well-circulated digital response that, too, is an aggregation. I am is a digital response to events, one tied to previous proclamations of identity spread by digital media. As with Charlie Hebdo and kosher supermarket moments, I am allows individuals to overcome a sense of anonymity in a socially oriented realm and adopt a unified cultural position. Now, we've seen this gesture previously in Fight Club. The narrative's focus initially is on anonymity, a faceless, nameless rebellion without much of a cause. When Robert Paulson, Meatloaf, is killed in a raid, his anonymity is suddenly replaced by the group chanted repetition: his name is Robert Paulson. The chant aggregates the nameless rebellion into a figure. Through social identity, Paulson becomes the rebellion. Now, beyond the immediate event, I am aggregates a number of digital moments. I am is a chain of digital aggregations. Occupy Wall Street circulated the I am the 99% claim in order to protest issues of economic power. Yo soy 132 aggregated the claim for Mexican Ibero-American university students angered over police brutality in the state of San Salvador. Atenso. Trayvon Martin's death was followed by the I am campaign, where photographs featured African Americans replicating Martin's hoodie. I am Liberian attempted to shift an assumed identification that Liberians equal Ebola from its stereotype to a reality not captured in the public aggregations of Africans in disease outbreak. So too did the I am Harvard campaign, which challenged aggregated assumptions about race and enrollment in the elite Ivy League school. While the I am movement offers various levels of symbolic action or even equipment for living in Brooks' terms, it also offers an example of the power of social media circulation as each campaign gains traction through digital media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Now, the origins of I am might be traced to 1968 when Memphis garbage workers proclaimed I am a man to protest their lack of civil rights. Media, in this case newspaper, television, captured the declaration and projected it outward. The aggregation of this moment, realized or not, into contemporary I am statements of identification offers insight into what Willem Flusser called the technical image. The moment the image becomes a computation, a processing of a variety of beliefs and ideas that are outside of the representation itself. That is, I am does not emerge out of one murder or one misplaced assumption about race in higher education. I am is an aggregation of other I am cultural responses, regardless of the meme's creator's knowledge of these previous responses. To paraphrase McLuhan, one does not have to be aware of media to be influenced by it. Aggregation operates at the level of media logic. Aggregations that fuel cultural and digital responses are based on what Roland Barthes called the power of the stereotype, the shape, identification, which is mine or anybody else's. Now, stereotypes, as in Barthes' more canonical example of Japan, or an Italian, in Empire Signs, or an Italian advertisement, or even more recently, Librarians and Disease, shape assumptions which become juxtaposed with other assumptions, which produce a point of that is X. Now, this process is easily identified in a mimetic repetition of I am statements that become associated with social protest, as the initial 1968 I'm a Man enthymeme was, or these moments become aggregated into that other level of Barthes' analysis, the notion of icity. In the Rhetoric of the Image, Barthes explains the concept of aggregation without ever using that term. In the essay's canonical discussion of advertising, Barthes explains the message without a code. Reading an advertisement for a line of Italian panzini products, a tomato, pasta, onions, garlic, a string bag, among these yellow, red, and green colors, they make up a sentiment of being Italian, even if one does not know how to use the ingredients to make Italian food. Knowledge of being Italian already exists in the aggregated products and objects. Examining the assembled objects generates an association called Italian. Now, the perceptual message and the cultural message, he tells us, are assembled by the viewer of the ad so the sense of what being Italian is understood, even if that sense is not representational. That is, Barthes never claims for the ad an exact representation of being Italian, and quite the opposite. And just as he'll compose at Japan in Empire of the Signs, Barthes explains how aggregation, the assemblage of stereotypes, assumptions, beliefs, preset values, and other things, create an idea of what something is. Not what something actually is, whatever that may be, but what we believe it is. This aggregation, not the actual thing called Italian, become other versions of icity when we look at social media moments as they circulate. Identificationicity may be one level signified by I am. Outrageicity is another. The feeling or sentiment of outrage over not a reality, whatever that reality might be, but a representation based on various levels of aware and unaware aggregations, like even in the I am. These aggregations are technical images. Social media is a space of outrageicity because how we compute the various associations, beliefs, ideologies, moments, assumptions, and stereotypes we encounter in headlines, in images, and in hyperlinks. In the social media space of aggregation, we compute belief out of a given representation without recognizing that representation's icity features. Facebook is an appropriate, right there. Is an appropriate contemporary site of aggregation for I am or for other digital outrageousity responses. Now, I'm always on Facebook. In fact, I spend a lot of time on social media in general. Over the last few years, I've noticed how users of social media, Facebook being the most dominant usage, often engage with aggregation in ways very similar to Barthes' Italianicity example. That is, the reader of a headline, the viewer of an image, or the clicker on a link often aggregates a number of previously held positions into one conceptual space in order to make sense of the information that she's engaging with. Doing so, I note, produces its own variation of Barthes' generic icity, where aggregation replaces whatever the moment is. My focus here was on one form of digitality, a sentiment or aggregated moment that I'm calling outrageicity. Recent events of I am demonstrate that outrage, as do many others. Outrageicity, I contend, is the digital aggregation of a variety of items that produce the feeling or sentiment of outrage because of the aggregation, and not necessarily because of what has occurred. Along with Barthes' notion of the image reservoir as a site of aggregated identity, of which his Italian advertisement reading belongs to, I also turn to Willem Flusser's concept of the technical image. The technical image, Flusser tells us, is a computation, or what he terms a computational concept, situated within a given digital image. Whatever the image represents, it does so via the computations that we make when viewing the image. These computations show, quote, relationships among things that no one would otherwise suspect, unquote. Flusser argues that, quote, technical images don't depict anything. They project something. Now, like Barthes' icity, a technical image is not a representation. It is a network of associations, or what we often call an aggregation. I am is another aggregation. Aggregation, as many of us know, is the assemblage into one space of often disparate items. Known best by RSS feeds or that come through the browser, aggregation compiles into a reader publications from a variety of sources. I tend to think of aggregation as a digital rhetorical gesture, a move to assemble various items into a belief, an ideology, a movement, an identity, a protest, and so on. I also understand aggregation as a type of digital response. And Bart's reader of the ad is a respondent to media, right, which is the advertisement. The Facebook user is often a respondent to aggregation via the newsfeed, but also via images and links. On November 3rd, 2011, I posted a link on my Facebook status update from chow.com entitled, "They Eat Horses, Don't They?" The short piece I linked to outlined some of the American aversion to eating horses by placing this disgust within the context of an impending congressional ban to ban horse slaughtering for consumption. The piece noted that while horse meat may seem exotic to many of us in the United States, even the supposedly less than exotic Canadians enjoy eating horse. My intent was to express my curiosity for eating horse, which I do have, and to see what kind of responses the status update would evoke. Now, most people who responded were angry. Eating horse evokes a feeling of outrageousity, even if no horse is being consumed or being offered up for consumption. Now, Karina Hahn and Jeff Hemsley call media moments that users focus on in such ways remarkable. They say, by this we mean that they exhibit qualities such that people want to make a remark about them. Eating horse, it seems, is one such remarkable moment. But why? How does media aggregation evoke a sentiment of outrage over eating one particular kind of animal, which is an animal that's also used for racing and show purposes in the state I live in, activities far more abusive and widespread than the number of horses that could possibly be eaten in the state of Kentucky? Now, media shares with us the knowledge that some people eat horses, in fact, in Belgium, Canada, Japan, and elsewhere. And chow.com helps facilitate that knowing, as I indicated with my share link. In the book Strange Foods, after a historical overview of nations that have eaten horse, Jerry Hopkins facilitates that knowledge by providing a recipe for horse tartare, noting that horse meat, quote, is particularly suited for raw dishes, unquote. The Travel Channel helps circulate this knowledge as well, and Andrew Zimmern, you might know from the very popular Bizarre Food Show, made that knowledge explicit in the show's Toronto episode where he goes to the Black Hoof restaurant and eats horse tartare. When Zimmern focuses on the consumption of horse, he displays a remarkable moment. Viewers are expected to respond to that moment by tweeting it, linking to his hosted YouTube videos, and commenting on Facebook, as I've done as well. Remarkable moments are meant to be shared. Remarkable moments, however, are not arbitrarily cast into the ether of social media, nor do they form out of simple moments or fascinations of interest. Instead, they are shared with connected groups in order to continue facilitating the specific knowledge at stake when the main channels of media communication, like a book, a website, or a travel show, cannot on their own do this facilitation. Remarkable moments, such as eating horse, can produce digital outrageousity. I am is a remarkable moment. So is eating horse. And so is Israel. On February 22nd, Agence France Presse posted a video to its website under the headline, "Gaza village flooded as Israel opens dam gates." The next day, the Daily Mail repeated this headline. So did Al Jazeera and Ma'an, as well as anti-Israel blogger Juan Cole. So did a number of Facebook posts. The only problem in this story and in this headline, in this moment of outrageousity, is that there are no dams for Israel to open into Gaza. And contrary to the reports circulating across social media as outrage that Israel flooded the Gaza Valley, Gaza is not a valley. The inaccuracy of this reporting is very problematic, but the circulation of a false story as reality reflects how a technical image aggregates an audience's preset beliefs, which are based on, obviously, a long-standing conflict in the Middle East, recent summer war and protective edge, other news reports over the years, and etc. The circulated headline becomes aggregated into these moments in order to produce outrageousity. Not at what actually occurred, because nothing occurred, but at what wants to believe occurred, much as one wants to believe that a few items in a picture constitute what it means to be Italian. As I've written elsewhere, one of the more well-known recent occurrences of this process is the John Pike image. If you don't know, we've seen this already a few times in the last couple of days. John Pike was a UC Davis police officer who, on the UC Davis campus, pepper sprayed protesters associated with the Occupy movement. This photograph of Pike's act quickly circulated on Facebook and other social media outlets. Now, Pike's act was remarkable. It produced outrage based on the aggregation of a number of past and current moments. A history of campus protests and social activism. Particularly in the UC system. Protests at UC Berkeley. the 1960s, even Kent State. These items are assembled for the reader of the image into various pixels so that a belief comes into being. Pepper spraying kids is wrong. What happened prior to, during, or even after the photograph was taken is not important. Not important at all. We never get to that part. As what we assemble in the picture. Outrage is the aggregation. Now, when I show the John Pike image to students in social media classes that I teach at the University of Kentucky, they have little reaction beyond some initial confusion or curiosity. That happened? All right. Kent State, Berkeley, what's that? Beyond not knowing the event occurred, the keyword associations of campus protest and violence do not register the way they do for academics in their 40s. These students do not feel outrageousity. They don't respond to the event on Facebook, and of course they're not even on Facebook. They don't retweet it. They don't respond to Charlie Hebdo either, because the cultural issues of France are so far removed from Lexington, Kentucky. They don't care about my horse-eating post projected on the classroom wall either. Who cares? Do you want to eat horse? That's cool. Doesn't mean anything to me. To compute the image, one has to have these other accumulated aggregations stored in memory, emotion, action, personal history, or otherwise. If you believe Israel is already evil, then you believe the damn story. If you believe horse consumption is terrible, you will express outrage. The overall question, though, is how we confuse representational moments. How we confuse representational moments as outrage when identifying the aggregations that form the outrage, without identifying, the aggregations that form the outrage in the first place. Digital outrageicity is a confusion of representation with aggregation. Digital outrageicity is a social media logic of aggregation. Thanks.